ਫੈਡਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਲੜਾਈ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ $8.1 ਬਿਲੀਅਨ ਵਾਧੂ ਖਰਚ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਤਹੱਈਆ ਪ੍ਰਗਟਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕੌਮੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਉੱਤੇ ਘਾਟੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਕਮੀ ਆਉਣ ਦੀ ਸੰਭਾਵਨਾ ਜਤਾਈ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਡਿਪਟੀ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਤੇ ਵਿੱਤ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟੀਆ ਫਰੀਲੈਂਡ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮੰਗਲਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੀ ਵਿੱਤੀ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਉੱਤੇ ਚਾਨਣਾ ਪਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਤੇ ਵਿੱਤੀ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਅਗਲੇ 7 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਉੱਤੇ $31.2 ਬਿਲੀਅਨ ਖਰਚ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ $28.4 ਬਿਲੀਅਨ ਨਾਲ 2021-22 ਵਿੱਤੀ ਵਰ੍ਹੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ। $4.5 ਬਿਲੀਅਨ ਓਮਿਕਰੋਨ ਵੇਰੀਐਂਟ ਨਾਲ ਸੀਜ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਰੱਖੇ ਗਏ ਹਨ ਤੇ $5 ਬਿਲੀਅਨ ਹੋਰ BC ਦੇ ਹੜ੍ਹਾਂ ਲਈ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਯਤਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਰੱਖੇ ਗਏ ਹਨ।
Okay, thank you very much. 21 months ago, a global pandemic reached our shores. Few of us had any idea how long it would last or the toll it would take. And today, we're facing Omicron, an even more virulent variant of this virus. But we can be confident that we will get through this because our government did understand from the very outset that to save lives, our economy would have to be locked down. So we put in place unprecedented measures to meet this unprecedented challenge. Today's economic and fiscal update provides Canadians with a transparent report of our nation's finances. It also includes targeted investments that will ensure we have the weapons we need to finish the fight against COVID-19, an effort that is more urgent now than ever with the surge of Omicron. To protect Canada's economic resilience in the face of a resurgence of the virus, we're moving forward on proposed measures, including the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit and Local Lockdown Program. These would deliver needed support to local businesses and workers should additional restrictions be required. Furthermore, we're providing support to help prevent outbreaks at workplaces and schools, including improvements to indoor ventilation and air quality. We're also moving forward with 10 days of paid sick leave for workers in federally regulated workplaces. While Canada is in the midst of a strong economic recovery, we know that challenges lie ahead. Inflation is a global phenomenon driven by the unprecedented challenge of reopening the world economy. Factors like global supply chain disruptions and climate change are driving up the prices of energy, groceries, and other everyday goods. We know that many Canadians are worried about the cost of living. Yesterday, the Government of Canada renewed the Bank of Canada's 2% inflation target to help ensure that the current inflation rate does not become entrenched. We know our investments to fight COVID-19 and support Canadians have been expensive. And we understand the responsibility we have to be careful and prudent managers of Canada's public finances. With winter upon us and Omicron now among us, we know that there will be tempests ahead, but we are resilient. Our plan is working. And as we finish the fight against COVID-19, we will turn our resolve towards fighting climate change, advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and building an economy that is stronger, fairer, more competitive, and more prosperous.
ਫੈਡਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਤੀ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਉੱਤੇ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਧਿਰਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਤੀਕਿਰਿਆ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ। NDP ਦੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਵਿੱਤੀ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਨਿਰਾਸ਼ਾਜਨਕ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਸ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਹਾਇਸ਼ੀ ਸੰਕਟ ਨੂੰ ਦੂਰ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਨਾ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਲਈ ਕੋਈ ਹੱਲ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ।
On the fiscal update, the context of this fiscal update, we've got an Omicron variant, which might be amongst the worst of what we've seen in this pandemic, given some of the evidence that's coming forward about how contagious it is. That means a real risk to people losing their jobs and lockdowns. We've got inflation driving up the cost of living and particularly hitting people when it comes to being able to find a home that's in their budget. We've got all these serious concerns, and seniors, the most vulnerable seniors, as well as people that rely on the child benefit, who've had their financial supports clawed back in this time. In light of all of that, this fiscal update does not respond to the urgency of the problems that people are up against. The vague promise of a of a one-time payment in the future does not respond to vulnerable seniors who have lost their homes because of the clawbacks to their financial supports, who can't afford to put food on the table or to pay their bills. It is not an action that is in line with how serious their crisis is that they're faced with. The fact that there's nothing in this fiscal update to implement any of the measures that they promised to do, to ban blind bidding, to end or put a tax on foreign buyers, or to put a tax on house flipping, real measures that could have helped make housing more affordable. So the lack of urgency and the lack of a response to deal with what people are dealing with right now, to respond to their worries, is why this fiscal update is really a failure. Particularly when we said the pandemic continues, we need supports for people to be there. And with Omicron, that's really showing, sadly, that there might be additional supports needed. This government has cut that help. And so that's the wrong approach, and this fiscal update doesn't fix those problems. It's looking really serious, and I'm really worried. We heard some of the briefings from healthcare experts, public health experts, that this is a very infectious strain. It could spread very quickly. Given that serious risk, there will have to be some changes that we put in place. I'm looking to guidance from the public health experts, but it could mean more reliance on virtual meetings and less people in Parliament itself, given how serious the spread is and how contagious it is. But again, I will look to the advice of public health in terms of what we should be doing.
ਤੇ ਉਧਰ ਦੂਜੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਲੀਡਰ ਐਰੀਨੋ ਟੂਲ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਉੱਤੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੇ ਸਾਧੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਵਿੱਤੀ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਤੇ ਕੇਂਦਰਿਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਉੱਤੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਅੰਦਰ ਮਹਿੰਗਾਈ ਦਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਵਾਧਾ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਦੋਸ਼ ਵੀ ਲਗਾਇਆ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀ ਮਹਿੰਗਾਈ ਕਾਰਨ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਈ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਹਮਣਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ।
Good afternoon. Minister Freeland hopes that Canadians are not paying attention to just inflation. Good for his budget, bad for yours. After having spent $500 billion, the Liberal government is celebrating a massive $144 billion deficit and only a modest recovery from an economy that had literally stopped a year ago. Instead of addressing the inflation crisis, instead of dealing with the cost of living crisis impacting millions of Canadians, Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal government will continue to make life more expensive for Canadian families and seniors. They're planning taxes of sale of homes. They're taxing and increasing taxes on January 1st. They will spend tens of billions of dollars with very little oversight or accountability. They're driving investment out of Canada, and they have failed Canadian workers repeatedly on pipelines, on softwood lumber, on agriculture, on steel, aluminum, Buy America, and the auto industry. This fall economic statement is an admission by the Trudeau government that they have no economic plan, just more debt, declining investment, and out-of-control prices saddled on the backs of families. The economy of Justin Trudeau is heading off the rails and is failing millions of Canadians who are being left behind. That's why Canada's Conservatives cannot support today's fall economic statement. Inflation is expected to soon surpass 5%, a 30-year high, and the Bank of Canada is warning it will remain high through much of next year. Families will pay another $1,000 for groceries next year. Housing and gas prices are up by over 30%. Half of young Canadians are giving up on the dream of ever being able to own their own home. And to cope with the rising costs and stagnant wages, Canadians have been piling on more and more personal debt in the last few years. Finances for many families are at a breaking point. Just inflation, just in time for interest rate increases next year. But today, the Liberals revealed they have no plan to get this country back on its feet. Just an ideological agenda that will raise your taxes starting on January 1st, making life more expensive next year. By 2023, Justin Trudeau will have doubled the national debt, spending more than all previous prime ministers combined. That is hard for most Canadians to comprehend.
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਓਮਿਕਰੋਨ ਵੇਰੀਐਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਫੈਲਣ ਤੋਂ ਰੋਕਣ ਲਈ ਕਮਰ ਕੱਸ ਲਈ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਫੈਡਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰਨਾਂ ਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਗੈਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਚਣ ਦੀ ਅਪੀਲ ਕੀਤੀ। ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਟਰੈਵਲਰਸ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਚਣ ਲਈ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਗਾਈਡਲਾਈਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਣ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਲਦ ਤੋਂ ਜਲਦ ਵੈਕਸੀਨ ਲਗਵਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਅਪੀਲ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਕਿਆਸਰਾਈਆਂ ਵੀ ਲਾਈਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਸਰਹੱਦ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਪਾਬੰਦੀਆਂ ਲੱਗ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਗੈਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੀ ਪਾਬੰਦੀ ਲਾਈ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ।
Look, as we promised Canadians, we will adjust our border measures as we learn more. We are constantly reviewing the data from Omicron and discussing what next to do. So I just want to recommend, I'm out of breath.
Sorry.
I just want to advise Canadians to get vaccinated, to follow public health, and to check travel advisory, which could change it any day. Every country makes its own decision based on the information that it has. As I said, Canada is constantly assessing, and stay tuned as discussions are unfolding. We could change at any moment, but for now, we're just assessing all the information that we have.
We had a cabinet meeting this morning, and much of our discussion was around the new Omicron variant. And we are very concerned about those that would be traveling abroad at this particular time. What we're seeing is an incredibly rapidly spreading variant, and we are worried about Canadians that might end up either stranded or sick abroad. And that would be obviously a terrible thing for them to happen. And this is our top of our mind, and the Prime Minister is going to discuss this issue and other COVID-19 related issues with his colleagues, the premiers, very soon. The meeting is going to be extremely soon. I don't know exactly the timing, but it will happen quickly. They'll be considering, obviously, the rapidly emerging information on the transmissibility of the variant, what it implies abroad, but also what it implies within Canada. We know that we have measures that we can use against COVID-19, but also against Omicron. So these measures are effective and will keep being effective. Public health measures, social, physical distancing, obviously isolation, vaccination, boosters. Those are obviously extremely important things that people must do.
ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਨੇਤਾ ਮਾਰਕ ਹੋਲੈਂਡ ਨੇ ਓਟਵਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਓਮਿਕਰੋਨ ਵੇਰੀਐਂਟ ਅਤੇ ਸੰਸਦ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਿਰੰਤਰ ਕੰਮ ਲਈ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਵਰਚੁਅਲ ਕਾਕਸ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਆਯੋਜਨ ਹੀ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਹਾਊਸ ਆਫ ਕਾਮਨਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਸੰਸਦ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੌਜੂਦਗੀ ਘਟੇਗੀ।
It's clear from independent populations in South Africa, Denmark, and the United Kingdom that Omicron is doubling at a rate of about 3 to 4 days. It's also clear that the level of contagion is about 4 to 8 times more contagious than Delta. As a result, we also heard the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario speak today, indicating that this is not the time for mass gatherings and that smaller is better. Therefore, particularly given the fact that members of Parliament are coming from all areas of the country and will be returning to all areas of the country, we're going to be initiating a number of changes. Tomorrow, our caucuses, both the National Caucus, regional caucuses, and sub-regional caucuses will all be meeting virtually. Tomorrow in the House of Commons, we will have a greatly reduced presence in the House of Commons. We will keep a large presence of ministers, but we're going to ensure that physical distancing is in place and that all individuals in the House will be separated from each other by at least 6 feet. And we encourage all Canadians to get vaccinated, get their booster shot, and certainly have their children be vaccinated. I think it's what is clear as we continue the fight against COVID-19 is that nothing is predictable. One of the things that I said when we were pushing for the importance of hybrid provisions is that we have to remain flexible and adapt as the public health circumstance changes. So we will be reviewing where we are from a public health perspective to determine the circumstance we return to in January. Look, with respect to testing, we have to acknowledge that the rapid testing, the antigen testing is not as efficacious as other forms of testing and therefore is unreliable. Given the degree of transmissibility of this particular variant, I think it makes sense that we adopt a much more careful posture, particularly given that people are coming from all over the country to this place and are going to be leaving this place to all over the country.